On the morning of May 12, 2025, the Daniel Patrick Moynihan United States Courthouse in Lower Manhattan buzzed with anticipation. Over 100 people lined up outside, eager to witness the opening of one of the most high-profile celebrity trials in recent memory, United States versus Sean Combs. The 55-year-old hip-hop mogul, known as Puff Daddy P. Diddy or Diddy, faced 5 federal charges: 1 count of racketeering conspiracy, 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. If convicted, Combs could face life in prison with a mandatory minimum of 15 years for the sex trafficking charges. The trial, presided over by U.S. District Judge Arun Subramanian, was expected to last 8 to 10 weeks, potentially concluding by early July 2025. Inside the courtroom, Combs sat at the defense table, dressed in a grey-beige sweater and formal attire, a stark contrast to the yellow jail uniforms he'd worn in pre-trial hearings. His hair and goatee had greyed, and he appeared subdued, a far cry from the charismatic figure who once hosted Hollywood's elite at his white parties. His mother, Janice Combs, and 3 teenage daughters were present in the gallery, offering visible support. Combs made a heart sign to them as he was escorted out of lockup by U.S. Marshals at the day's end, a gesture that underscored the personal stakes of the trial. The trial's first day began with the finalization of the jury, following a week of rigorous selection that started on May 5th. Judge Subramanian, a Biden appointee and the first South Asian jurist on the Southern District of New York bench, had vetted hundreds of potential jurors to seat a panel of 12 main jurors and 6 alternates. The process was meticulous, given the case's media saturation. Nearly all prospective jurors had seen the 2016 hotel surveillance video of Combs assaulting his former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, and many were familiar with the allegations through news reports or social media. Jurors were questioned about their ability to remain impartial, their views on sex, drugs, alcohol, and violence, and their familiarity with a list of over 190 names and places that might arise during the trial, including celebrities like Kanye West, Kid Cudi, and Michael B. Jordan. The list was so extensive that Subramanian jokingly compared it to an appendix for The Lord of the Rings. One juror was disqualified for working at Simon & Schuster, which published a book containing allegations against Combs, while another, a photo producer at HBO, was retained despite the network's recent documentary, The Fall of Diddy, as she had no direct involvement. At approximately 9 a.m., opening statements began, setting the stage for a battle over one central question: coercion or consent. Assistant U.S. Attorney Emily A. Johnson delivered the prosecution's opening, painting a damning portrait of Combs as a man who hid a dark side behind his public persona. To the public, he was Puff Daddy or Diddy, a charismatic business icon, a larger-than-life figure, Johnson told the jury. But there was another side to the rapper, a side that ran a criminal enterprise. She alleged that for over 20 years, Combs, with the help of a trusted inner circle, committed crime after crime, using his business empire, Bad Boy Entertainment, Sean John and other ventures, to facilitate sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Johnson's narrative centered on the freak-offs, described as elaborate, drug-fueled sexual performances that sometimes lasted days. She alleged Combs coerced women into participating through threats, violence, and drugs like ecstasy, ketamine, and GHB, often filming the encounters to use as blackmail. You will see them put on a performance high on ecstasy, while they pretend to enjoy themselves, because that's what the defendant said he wanted, she said, emphasizing the videos as key evidence of coercion. She detailed specific acts of violence, particularly against Ventura, whom Combs allegedly threw to the floor in an SUV in 2009, stomping repeatedly on her face, and beat in 2016 after learning she was seeing another man, brutally kicking her in the back and flinging her around like a rag doll. The prosecution introduced the 2016 hotel surveillance video, shown to the jury during the first witness's testimony as a cornerstone of their case. The video, aired by CNN in May 2024, depicted Combs shoving Ventura to the ground, kicking her multiple times, and dragging her across a hotel hallway in Los Angeles. Johnson argued it illustrated Combs's use of violence to enforce compliance, not just in personal relationships, but as part of a broader criminal enterprise. She also described Combs' attempts to suppress the video, alleging he paid a hotel security guard $100,000 in cash, delivered in a brown paper bag, and secured a signed agreement barring the guard from speaking. Johnson outlined plans to call 3 women as witnesses, Ventura and 2 Jane Does, one a former employee who would testify to sexual assault by Combs. A 4th alleged victim, Victim 3, was uncertain to testify due to difficulties reaching her lawyer, a point raised by Assistant U.S. Attorney Maureen Comey before the trial. The prosecution's case, Johnson said, would show how Combs' inner circle, including employees and associates, enabled and covered up his crimes, using company resources to exploit women. Cassie Ventura, now 38 and pregnant with her 3rd child, spoke with a quiet intensity that silenced the room. She began with the early days of her relationship with Combs, meeting him in 2006 at age 19 when she signed with Bad Boy Records. Their romance started around 2007, and by 2008, when she was 22, Combs introduced her to what he called freak-offs. She described her first encounter at his Los Angeles home, where she felt naive and enamored, participating to please him, despite the humiliation that washed over her. These encounters, she said, became nearly weekly, hundreds over the years, involving male escorts, drugs like ecstasy, ketamine and MDMA, and Combs' strict control. He dictated her appearance, white or French tip nails, high heels, specific lighting, and directed the sexual acts, often choking her or demanding degrading acts like being urinated on. Escorts were paid between $1,500 and $6,000, often through services like Cowboys for Angels, and Combs sometimes recorded the encounters, using the footage as blackmail. Cassie testified that she used drugs to dissociate, feeling worthless and fearing violence if she refused. Her voice trembled as she recounted the physical abuse that began in 2007, just months into their relationship. She described beatings that left her with bruises, black eyes, and a permanent scar on her eyebrow from a 2013 incident where Combs threw her onto a bed's corner. In 2011, after a party in Los Angeles, Combs called her derogatory names, beat her in a car, and stomped on her face, leaving her bloodied and bruised. Photos from December 2011, shown to the jury, revealed bruises on her buttocks and thigh, evidence of Combs's violence after she briefly dated rapper Kid Cudi. She spoke of Combs's jealousy, recounting how he threatened to hurt both her and Cudi, even speaking of arson by blowing up Cudi's car in his driveway with his friends watching. A tense meeting at Soho House in Los Angeles between the 3 ended with Combs denying the car threat. But the fear lingered. One of the most harrowing moments came when Cassie described the 2016 incident at the Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles, captured on the surveillance footage shown in court. She was trying to leave a freak off before her movie premiere, fearing Combs' reaction if she didn't please him. She fled barefoot, but Combs, wearing only a towel, chased her to the elevator lobby, threw her to the ground, kicked, punched, and dragged her back toward the room. She read a text she sent to Combs afterward. "I have a black eye and a fat lip. You are sick for thinking it is okay what you've done." Her lip was swollen, her eye blackened, and she recalled Combs throwing a vase at her in the lobby, the shards narrowly missing her. The jury watched the footage in silence, the brutality undeniable. Cassie's testimony turned even darker as she recounted a 2018 incident, one of the final moments of their relationship. After a closure conversation dinner, Combs raped her on her living room floor. She cried on the stand, her voice breaking as she recalled saying no while his eyes went black, describing him as not himself. The assault was quick, and he left immediately after, leaving her shattered. It was the last time she participated in a freak-off, and their relationship soon ended. The emotional toll of the abuse was a thread throughout her testimony. Cassie revealed she suffered flashbacks, particularly during a 2023 music video shoot that led her to contemplate suicide. She told her husband, Alex Fine, "You can do this without me," and tried to leave their home, her mind spiraling. She sought trauma therapy and rehab for opiate dependency caused by the drugs she used during freak-offs, which also led to physical issues like gastrointestinal problems and urinary tract infections. She wrote a book as Trauma Therapy, hoping Combs would read it and understand her pain, a hope she now saw as futile. Combs's defense attorney, Tenny Geragos, daughter of prominent lawyer Mark Geragos, followed with a contrasting narrative. Sean Combs is a complicated man, but this is not a complicated case, she began, framing the trial as an overreach by prosecutors trying to criminalize consensual relationships. Geragos acknowledged Combs's flaws, admitting he had a bad temper and could be out of control when angry or jealous, but insisted he was not a racketeer or sex trafficker. "You are not here to judge his sexual preferences," she told the jury, urging them to focus on the law, not discomfort with Combs' lifestyle. Geragos argued the freak-offs were consensual, part of a swinger's lifestyle among adults who made free choices every single day for years. She described the women in Combs' life, including Ventura, as strong, capable, and in love with him, suggesting they stayed in relationships for mutual benefits, not coercion. The defense planned to use the same videos cited by the prosecution, claiming they would show willing participants, not victims. The videos may be hard to watch, but they are strong evidence that the freak-offs were consensual and not based on coercion, Geragos said. She also introduced a motive for the accusers, alleging they were driven by financial gain. "They will tell you they were victimized. Ask yourself, what is their motive?" "The answer is simple. Money," Geragos asserted, pointing to the dozens of civil lawsuits filed against Combs since Ventura's 2023 case, which was settled for an undisclosed 8-figure sum. The defense hinted at mutual violence in Combs' relationship with Ventura, a strategy they informed Judge Subramanian of on May 9th, though the judge expressed reluctance to allow such evidence without further review. Geragos addressed the 2016 video directly, admitting it showed domestic violence, but arguing it was an isolated incident, not proof of trafficking or racketeering. She also suggested jealousy and breaches of trust drove conflicts in Combs' relationships, framing him as a jerk at times, but not a criminal. The defense's strategy was clear: sow doubt about the prosecution's narrative, humanize Combs, and redirect focus to the accuser's credibility. After opening statements, the prosecution called 2 witnesses, marking the trial's first substantive evidence. The courtroom atmosphere grew tense as explicit details emerged, prompting Combs' daughters to leave during particularly graphic testimony. First witness, Israel Flores, a Los Angeles police officer since 2018, took the stand to provide context for the 2016 hotel surveillance video. Before joining the LAPD, Flores worked for a security company at the Century City Hotel, where the incident occurred. He testified about the hotel's security protocols and the events captured on the video, which showed Combs assaulting Ventura. The prosecution used Flores's testimony to authenticate the footage and underscore Combs' attempts to suppress it, alleging he bribed a security guard to obtain the tape. On cross-examination, Combs' attorney Brian Steele challenged Flores's credibility, noting that several details in his testimony were absent from an incident report he claimed to have written at the time. Legal analyst Misty Maris, commenting on CNN, described this as a defense tactic to sow doubt in the jury's mind, framing witnesses as unreliable. The video's centrality was evident, with Maris noting it supported the prosecution's narrative of violence as a tool for coercion in the alleged freak-offs. Second witness, Daniel Phillip, The prosecution's second witness, Daniel Phillip, a male stripper and review manager, delivered over an hour of explicit and harrowing testimony that captivated the courtroom. Phillip testified that starting in 2012, he was paid up to $6,000 per encounter to have sex with Ventura at Combs' direction, often at hotels like the Gramercy Park Hotel. Combs was present, typically sitting in a corner watching and masturbating, and sometimes recorded the encounters. Phillip's first encounter, he recounted, was unexpected. He arrived expecting a bachelorette party, only to find Ventura alone and a man in a white robe, hat and bandana, whom he recognized as Combs by his voice, despite Combs not identifying himself. Phillip described Combs as controlling, directing every detail of the sexual encounters, from positioning to lighting. He testified to witnessing Combs' violence against Ventura on multiple occasions. In one incident at Ventura's home, when she didn't immediately respond to Combs' call because she was on her computer, Combs dragged her by her hair into a bedroom. Phillip heard what sounded like a smack and Combs shouting, "Bitch, when I tell you to come here, you come here now, not later." In another instance, Combs threw a liquor bottle at Ventura for not obeying quickly, then beat her in a separate room, leaving her crying and apologizing. Phillip recalled Ventura running to him afterward, shaking and jumping into his lap, prompting him to ask why she stayed with Combs. "I tried to explain to her that she was in real danger," he testified, adding that he returned to check on her safety despite the violence. Phillip also described Combs taking a photo of his ID as insurance, which he perceived as a threat. When asked by prosecutor Maureen Comey why he didn't call the police, Phillip cited concern for Ventura's well-being and his role as a bystander. His testimony painted a picture of a controlling and volatile environment, aligning with the prosecution's allegations of coercion. On cross-examination, defense attorney Xavier R. Donaldson, a recent addition to Combs' team, focused on Phillip's role as a stripper, emphasizing that his review show prohibited prostitution. Donaldson probed details of Phillip's first encounter with Ventura, engaging in a contentious exchange over whether Phillip's job was to optimize the ladies' night experience. The defense aimed to cast Phillip's participation as professional and consensual, challenging the prosecution's framing of exploitation. Court adjourned before cross-examination concluded, with Phillip set to return on May 13th. Throughout the day, Combs appeared tense, sitting back in his chair as Phillip's testimony unfolded. He stood when Geragos introduced him during her opening, a moment that humanized him to the jury. His family's presence, particularly his mother and daughters, added an emotional layer, though the daughter's departure during explicit testimony highlighted the case's sensitive nature. Outside the courtroom, the trial drew intense media scrutiny. Posts on X reflected public fascination, with Reuters tweeting about the trial's start and the prosecution's allegations of drug-fueled freak-offs and blackmail. The public gallery was packed, and courtroom sketches by artists like Elizabeth Williams and Jane Rosenberg captured key moments, as federal rules prohibited photos or video. The first day established the trial's core conflict, whether Combs' actions constituted a criminal enterprise or consensual relationships exaggerated by opportunists. The prosecution's strategy leaned heavily on the 2016 video and Phillip's testimony to depict Combs as a violent manipulator, while the defense countered by normalizing the freak-offs as lifestyle choices and questioning accusers' motives. The video's prominence early in the trial, as noted by analyst Misty Maris, suggests the prosecution aims to anchor their narrative in tangible evidence of violence, though the defense's admission of domestic violence risks complicating their consent argument. Phillip's testimony, while graphic, raises questions about witness credibility, as the defense's cross-examination began to probe inconsistencies. The absence of victim 3 could weaken the prosecution's case, though Ventura's anticipated testimony on May 13th promises to be pivotal. The defense's attempt to introduce mutual violence by Ventura, if allowed, could shift the narrative, but risks alienating jurors if perceived as victim-blaming. Conclusion. The first day of Sean Combs's trial was a dramatic opening to a case that could redefine his legacy and the entertainment industry's accountability. With opening statements framing coercion versus consent, and witnesses like Flores and Phillip providing stark allegations of violence and control, the prosecution set a forceful tone. The defense, meanwhile, sought to humanize Combs and cast doubt on the accuser's motives, setting up a contentious battle. As the trial adjourned, all eyes turned to May 13th, when Ventura's testimony and Phillip's continued cross-examination would further shape the narrative.